My name is Alina. I am 32 years old. The ink on my divorce papers is barely dry. And for the last 36 agonizing months, I have been the invisible pillar holding up the roof over my mother's head. To the outside world, and specifically to the extended family gathering around the linen-draped table that night, I was the flighty daughter, the one who couldn't keep a husband, the disappointment. My mother, Sylvia, had crafted this narrative with the precision of a master sculptor, chipping away at my reputation until nothing remained but the shape she wanted people to see. But the reality was far more transactional. While she painted me as a failure to her friends and our relatives, my useless bank account had been quietly funding her lifestyle, keeping her lights on, and ensuring she didn't face the consequences of her own financial chaoticism. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration of my father's retirement, but Sylvia, as always, had found a way to make herself the sun around which we all orbited. She had been drinking, just enough to sharpen her tongue, but not enough to slur her words. She held court at the head of the table, her laughter piercing the ambient noise of the bistro. Then she turned her gaze toward me. It wasn't a look of maternal affection. It was the look a predator gives wounded prey. "You know," she announced, her voice pitched perfectly to carry over the clatter of silverware, "I worry about Alina, truly. It must be so hard starting over with nothing at her age." She paused for effect, smiling that tight, pitying smile that curdled my blood. "Tell me, darling, how does it feel to be completely useless, to have to rely on everyone else just to survive?" The question hung in the air, toxic and heavy. My stomach did that familiar somersault, the conditioned reflex of a child trained to shrink, to apologize, to absorb the blow so the boat wouldn't rock. I saw my father, Arthur, wince and look down at his plate. My cousins shifted uncomfortably. They waited for me to crumble. They waited for the flush of embarrassment, the stammered excuse, the submission. But something inside me didn't shrink. It calcified. The fear that had ruled me for 3 years suddenly evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I wasn't looking at a mother. I was looking at a debtor who had mistaken her creditor for a doormat. I picked up my wine glass, took a slow sip, and set it down with a deliberate click. "It feels fantastic, actually," I said, my voice steady and dangerously calm, "especially since I just stopped paying your rent." The smile on Sylvia's face didn't fade naturally. It froze, then shattered. The ambient noise of the restaurant seemed to get sucked out of the room. My father's fork slipped from his fingers, clattering against the fine china like a gunshot. He stared at me, his eyes wide, looking at me as if I had just confessed to a capital crime. "What?" Arthur's voice was hoarse, sharper than I had heard it in years. "Rent? What are you talking about?" Sylvia's eyes darted frantically between us, her mind visibly racing to spin a web, to twist the narrative, to find the angle where she was the victim and I was the liar. It was her superpower. But this time, I wasn't fighting with emotions. I was fighting with receipts. She had no idea that this wasn't an accidental outburst. This was a demolition I had been planning for weeks, down to the seating chart. "Don't be dramatic, Alina," Sylvia snapped, her voice rising an octave, forcing a laugh that sounded like glass grinding in a disposal. She waved a dismissive hand at the relatives. "She's joking. You know how sensitive she gets after the divorce. Her imagination runs wild." "I am not joking," I said, locking eyes with my father. I ignored her completely. "For 3 years, Dad, every single month, I have been paying her rent, her electricity, and her internet out of my salary, out of my divorce settlement. She told me you couldn't handle the stress. She told me to keep quiet to protect you, but I'm done protecting everyone but myself." The color drained from my father's face, leaving him looking gray and aged. He turned to his wife slowly. This was a man who had prized honesty above all else, a man who thought their finances were stable. "Is that true, Sylvia? Have you been taking money from our daughter and hiding it from me?" Sylvia straightened her spine, attempting to regain the high ground. "Oh, please, Arthur, you know how she exaggerates. I needed a little bridge loan when my hours were cut at the firm. I didn't want to burden you with trivialities, so I asked family. That's what family does." "A bridge loan?" I repeated, the heat rising in my chest, fueling the fire rather than consuming me. "Mom, I have paid your entire lease for 36 months. You called me sobbing at 2 a.m., screaming that you would be homeless. You said if I didn't help, you'd be on the street, and everyone would know I was a selfish, ungrateful brat who let her mother rot. A murmur rippled through the table. My cousins were exchanging glances. My father looked from me to her, the betrayal etching deep lines around his mouth. I never knew, he whispered. You told me we were fine. You said you had everything under control. I did, she shot back, her mask slipping. And now she wants to humiliate me in front of everyone because she's bitter about her own failed marriage. It's pathetic, really. You humiliated me first, I countered, my voice cutting through her deflection. You did it in front of the very people you've been lying to. But you're right about one thing. This is about control. You didn't just need help. You loved the leverage. As long as I was paying, you could call me a failure, you could treat me like dirt, and you knew I'd still wire the money on the first of the month because I was terrified of you. Why didn't you tell me? My dad asked, his voice trembling. Because every time I tried to say no, she brought you up, I said, turning to him, my heart breaking for the man who had been kept in the dark. She'd say, you're just like your father, running away when things get hard. She weaponized your name to keep me in line. I thought I owed her my life. The restaurant felt like a theater, and we were the tragic main act. I didn't care who was watching anymore. This wasn't a tantrum, it was an exorcism. My mind flashed back to the beginning, the first night. I had just moved into a studio apartment the size of a shoebox after my separation. I was surrounded by unpacked boxes, smelling the stale scent of failure, when she called. She was hysterical. They're raising the rent, she had cried. Your father doesn't care. He says we need to budget. I can't do this, Elena. I'm fragile. Are you really going to abandon me? I remembered sitting on that cold floor, feeling the weight of the world. I'll help, I had whispered, just until you get back on your feet. I knew you were a good daughter, she had cooed, the tears stopping instantly. Better than your father. 1 month became 3. 3 became 12. Every time I tried to stop, the threats came. After all I sacrificed? No wonder your husband left you. You're lucky I still claim you. Back at the table, Sylvia tried to regain control. He doesn't need the gritty details, she interrupted, waving her hand. I asked for help as a mother. It's normal. I agreed because you made me feel like a monster. I agreed because you said Dad would turn everyone against me, I shouted, finally letting the volume match my anger. You said he'd think I was bad with money if he knew I couldn't support us both. So I took on your debt. I took on your guilt. Did you tell her that? Dad asked, his voice deadly quiet. Did you tell her I would turn against her? Sylvia laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. You know how dramatic she is, Arthur. I was stressed. I might have said things I didn't mean. You meant every word, I said. You wanted me scared. You wanted me dependent. I reached into my tote bag. My hand brushed against the thick manila envelope I had prepared. I had hesitated earlier, wondering if this was too nuclear, too cruel. But after hearing her laugh at my uselessness while wearing a dress bought with my money, the hesitation vanished. What is that? Sylvia asked, her eyes narrowing. Proof, I said simply, of every transfer, every loan you said was a gift, every time you claimed you had no one else. I slammed the envelope onto the table. It landed with a heavy thud that seemed to shake the glassware. My father reached for it, but Sylvia slapped her hand on top of it. Mark, don't, she hissed. This is ridiculous. We can talk about this at home. We tried talking at home, I said. That's how we got here. You rely on private conversations so you can rewrite them later. That's why I brought this tonight. I needed witnesses. My father gently but firmly peeled her fingers off the envelope. He slid the contents out. The stark white papers spilled onto the dark tablecloth, highlighted bank statements, printed screenshots of text messages where she promised just 1 more month, scribbled notes of dates and lies. He flipped through them in silence. The silence was louder than the shouting had been. You told me your sister lent you the money for that credit card bill, he murmured, reading a line item. You told me your bonus covered the rent. I didn't want to stress you, Sylvia insisted, her smile now a grotesque grimace. I asked Alina because she offered. No, I cut in. You cried. You threatened. You told me if I didn't pay, you'd disappear, and it would be my fault. My father's hand trembled. He looked up, tears in his eyes. Did you tell her I didn't care? I was upset, Sylvia yelled, finally snapping. Do you know how hard it is holding this family together? Holding it together? I scoffed. You've been holding us hostage. You insult me in public and drain my accounts in private. You call me useless while living in an apartment I pay for. What's your tone? She hissed. I am still your mother. Exactly, I said, my voice cracking. You are my mother. You were supposed to protect me, not turn me into your emergency fund. And just so we are clear, starting next month, your landlord calls you. I already spoke to him. I'm off to lease. You wouldn't dare, she whispered, her face losing all color. I already did. That's why I said it feels great. For once, the consequences are yours. A couple at the next table stared openly. Sylvia noticed. People are watching, she whispered, panic setting in. You're embarrassing yourself. No, I'm embarrassing you, I said. And the fact that you care more about that than what you've done explains everything. Elena, Dad said, his voice heavy with realization, is this why you couldn't come on the family trip? Why you sold your car? Oh, please, Sylvia interjected. She's always been terrible with money. She's just blaming me for her incompetence. I pulled out my phone. I recorded the calls, Mom, the last 6 months. Do you want me to play the one from last Tuesday, where you called me a selfish cow for asking to be paid back? For the first time, genuine fear flickered in her eyes. You wouldn't. Try me. Before I could press play, a hand touched my shoulder. I looked up to see my Aunt Morgan, Sylvia's younger sister. I hadn't seen her approach. Let her talk first, Morgan said quietly. You don't have to burn the whole house down yet. Great, Sylvia muttered. Here comes the saint. Morgan pulled up a chair. I heard enough from the doorway. This isn't the first time, Diane. Do you want me to tell them about the credit card you opened in my name when I was in college? Or the money you took from Grandma for medical tests that turned into a new sofa? The table gasped. My grandmother, Evelyn, who had been silent until now, stiffened. That was years ago, Sylvia hissed. I paid you back. No, you guilted me into dropping it, Morgan said calmly. Just like you guilted Elena. It's a pattern. You play the victim, you take what you want, and when you're caught, you attack. You knew? I asked Morgan, feeling a betrayal of a different kind. Not about the rent, she said gently. If I had known, I would have stopped it. But I recognized the tone. It's the same voice she used on me. You are all ganging up on me, Sylvia cried, tears streaming down her face, tears of rage, not remorse. I sacrificed everything for this family, and this is the thanks I get? You didn't sacrifice, I said softly. You consumed. At the next table, a teenager was holding up her phone, clearly recording. Sylvia saw it. The realization that her carefully curated image was being broadcast to the world terrified her more than the destruction of her family. Stop staring, she screamed at the room. Mind your own business. Please, she whispered to me, leaning in. Don't play the recordings. Don't let them hear. Now you care? I asked, tears finally spilling over. You didn't care when you broke me. You only care now that you're exposed. My dad cleared his throat. Elena, you don't need to play them. I believe you. I am so sorry I didn't see it. That apology, simple, sincere, broke me more than the abuse. I looked at my mother, seeing a scared, small tyrant. If you walk away, Sylvia threatened, her voice shaking, you'll regret it. You'll have no one. You'll fail without me to guide you. That's not true, Morgan said. She has me. She has herself. I put my phone away. I'm not sparing you, I told my mother. I'm sparing myself. I don't need to hear your voice anymore. I'm done paying your rent, I continued, standing up. I'm done keeping your secrets. If people find out, it's because your actions finally caught up to your image. So what now? She asked, her face crumbling. You just leave? What happens now is that I stop being the useless daughter, I said, pushing my chair back. The scrape was loud and final. I was never useless. I was useful. And you just lost your utility. I turned to leave, but Dad called my name. Elena, wait. He stood up, looking broken but resolved. What do you want to happen now? I want it to stop, I said. I want accountability. I don't want the money back. I know I'll never see it. I just want her to stop doing this to people. We looked back at the table. Sylvia sat frozen. You're going to call the landlord tomorrow, Dad told her, his voice flat. You're going to tell him Elena is out, and then you and I are going to figure out how you pay your own way, because I'm not covering this either. You can't do this to me, she wailed. "You're my husband." "And she is our daughter," he said. "You chose to exploit her. If you need a smaller place, you move. If you need money, you earn it. But the Bank of Elena is closed. And frankly, so is the Bank of Arthur until I figure out how much you've lied to me." "You're abandoning me." "You abandoned her a long time ago," Morgan said. "She's just finally walking out of the ruins." I picked up my phone one last time. I opened a group chat I had created earlier. Dad, Grandma, Morgan, and my cousins. I attached the folder of evidence. The bank statements, the timeline, the screenshots. Send. Phones buzzed around the table. "What did you do?" Sylvia gasped. "I made sure the truth can't be deleted," I said. "I'm not posting it on Facebook, but the family knows. So don't try to lie to them about why you're moving." "You think this is a victory?" she spat. "Watching your mother suffer?" "My victory," I said, "is realizing that your suffering is no longer my responsibility." I walked out of the restaurant. The cool night air hit my face, and for the first time in 3 years, I could breathe. I didn't feel useless. I felt free. 3 months have passed. My alarm went off at 7 a.m. today. My first thought wasn't, did she text me? Is there a crisis? It was, do I want oat milk or almond milk? It's a small thing, but that silence is a luxury I bought with my own courage.
I moved into a new apartment, one where the rent is mine alone. I've started saving again. My bank account is growing, slowly but surely, like a plant finally brought into the sunlight. The fallout was significant. Sylvia lost her apartment. She refused to downsize until the sheriff came with an eviction notice. She now lives in a rented room in a shared house, far from her socialite circles. My grandmother cut her off. My dad separated his finances from hers and started therapy. They are living separately for now. Sylvia spiraled. She sent nasty texts, then tearful apologies, then threats. I ignored them all. My therapist calls it an extinction burst, the final tantrum of a manipulator losing control. Then, last week, she asked to meet. Neutral ground, no money, just talk. I went. When I saw her in the coffee shop, she looked smaller. The perfect hair was gone. The expensive makeup was missing. She looked like a tired woman in her 50s. "I lost the apartment," she said bluntly. "I know," I replied. I was angry, she admitted. But then I looked at the math. I was living on 3 incomes, yours, mine, and the lies I told your father. I didn't know how to be an adult. She told me she was seeing a counselor, that she realized she had become her own mother, the very woman she hated. "I'm not asking for money," she said, seeing my guard go up. I don't want that dinner to be the last time we speak." "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said honestly. "Maybe not for a long time. But if you respect my boundaries, no money, no guilt, no insults, we can try small steps." "Fair," she whispered. "You were never useless, Alina. I think I needed you to believe that so I wouldn't have to face how useless I felt." It wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't a movie where we hugged and cried. But walking away from that coffee shop, I realized the revenge wasn't the public explosion or the group chat. The revenge was me living a life that didn't revolve around her. I destroyed her illusion of control, and in doing so, I built my own reality. So I ask you, if the person who was supposed to protect you spent years draining you dry, would you light the match and burn their reputation to the ground? Or is the greatest revenge simply proving them wrong by thriving without them? If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to fight to break free from toxic family expectations, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Share this story with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself. You are not useless, and you are not alone. See you in the next one.